This is 10.5, part 3. We're going to be rationalizing denominators in this section. And in part 2, you did rationalizing denominators containing one term. In part 3, we're going to be rationalizing denominators containing two terms. So let's look at the first example. And you have the two terms that they're talking about are these two right here. And in order to rationalize them, we're going to use what's called the conjugate. And the conjugate comes up a few times in Algebra 2, so it's good to know it. What the conjugate is, conjugate, that's how you spell it. It is the other term that makes the difference of squares. So, for instance, if I have a plus b, the conjugate to a plus b is a minus b. Vice versa, if I have a minus b, the conjugate would be a plus b. So in this case, I have a plus b, so my conjugate is going to be conjugate will be a minus b, which is the 3 times the square root of 2 minus 4. So that's what I'm going to multiply top and bottom by. And what it does, because a plus b times a minus b gives us a squared minus b squared, it gets rid of any square roots because we're going to be squaring that term, and a square cancels out a square root. So let's look at if we take and multiply the bottom of this first example by the conjugate, minus 4. And you got to multiply the bottom by that and the top by that. 3 square root of 2 minus 4. Okay, we're timesing both of these. On the bottom, just like I said, it's going to become a squared minus b squared. The first term squared minus the second term squared. So what we get is going to be 3 square root of 2. And we're squaring this. And we got the second term squared, so minus 4 squared. I don't necessarily need parentheses for minus 4 squared because there's only one number, so I know that number is going to be squared. This top, though, I'm going to distribute. I'm going to take 8 times 3 times the square root of 2, so I multiply the 8 and 3. That's 24 times the square root of 2. And I'm going to take 8 times 4, so that's minus 32. Okay, so the top is pretty much done for now, so we got 24 square root of 2 minus 32. The bottom, if I square the 3, I get 9. If I square the square root of 2, the square root crosses out with the squared, and I get times 2, and 4 squared is 16. And we've got 9 times 2 to do, so that's 18, so we got 24 square root of 2 minus 32. All over 18 minus 16. And 18 minus 16 is 2, so we got 24 square root of 2 minus 32 over 2. Now we can reduce this. And how it works, since both terms are divided by 2, I'm going to divide the 24 by 2, and I'm also going to divide the 32 by 2. So I get 12. And I'm not going to change the square root at all. So 12 square root of 2 minus 16. And that's our answer for example 5. Pause here, try your checkpoint. When you come back, I'll give you the answer. It's on the next page. Okay, checkpoint 5, the answer is 12 times the square root of 3 minus 18. Let's look at example 6. Okay, this time I've got a minus b. So because I have square root of 6 minus 3, the conjugate and you don't have to write this down every time. I'm writing it down for your sake so you can see what the conjugate is. The conjugate is going to be square root of 6 plus the square root of 3. So that's what we're going to multiply on top and bottom. So we put it in here, square root of 6 plus the square root of 3. Multiply there, multiply here, square root of 6 plus the square root of 3. And the biggest mistake people make is they put minus instead of plus. Remember, the conjugate's got to be the opposite sign in between the two terms. So if it starts with minus, it's plus. If it starts with plus, the conjugate is minus. So the bottom's easy again. It's just going to be a squared minus b squared. So we got the square root of 6 squared minus the square root of 3 squared. The top, not as easy, because now we have two terms to multiply by, which means we've got to FOIL. So we're going to take 2 times the square root of 6, that's 2 times the square root of 6. And we're going to have 2 times the square root of 3, so plus 2 square root of 3. And then we're going to have square root of 5 times the square root of 6. We can actually multiply those, that's the square root of 30. And the square root of 5 times the square root of 3, again, we can multiply those. That's going to be plus the square root of 15. Now, if I'm looking at the top, I've got the square root of 6. I cannot reduce the square root of 6. I got the square root of 3. I can't reduce the square root of 3. The square root of 30 doesn't reduce either, and neither does the square root of 15. So the top's going to stay the same. Let's see what we get on the bottom. So repeat the top, 2 square root of 6 plus 2 square root of 3 plus the square root of 30 plus the square root of 15. And square root of 6 squared is just 6. Square root of 3 squared is just 3. So that's going to give us 3 on the bottom. 2 square root of 6 plus 2 square root of 3 plus the square root of 30 plus the square root of 15, all divided by 3. Now, we're going to look to see if the 3 can go into everything. In order to do the division, the 3 has to go into each term. Well, 3 doesn't go into 2 evenly, so we're already done. That's our answer. That's all for Part 3, 10.5 Part 3. I will see you in class.